Board members, welcome back from a little bit longer lunch. We hope that the conversations will get us ready for our next action item here. Let me just make sure, just do a visual of if we need to go track anybody down. I think Member Lear just stepped out. Is Member Green back online with us? Perfect. Member Green is with us. So,
yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Member Green. It looks like we just, and I think Member Kelly is in the building, and then, okay. So let's go back to our law and licensing report out. We have one more additional item, and I'm going to turn time over to Chair Carey.
Thank you, Chair. This is revisiting item 6.9, R277-123, process for members of the public to report violations of statute and board rule by amendment. And the motion for the board, the draft that came out of committee was draft 1. And I will be moving a draft 3 to have the board consider draft 3 at this time, Chair.
Is it draft 1 or draft 2 that came out of committee? Draft 1 that came out of committee?
Yes.
And there's a substitute motion to move draft 3. Is that what I understand?
That's correct, Chair.
Okay. Where's
That was a collaborative
do you want to
effort.
speak to 2, where 2 went? That was the question.
Oh,
But we want to discuss draft 3.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the motion then is to discuss draft 3, not draft 2. So the substitute motion that the board approve R277-123 process for members of the public to report violations of statute and board rule draft 3. And this is not final by any means, just so that the public and the board is aware, because we know that there's going to be debate and amendments coming. So is there any opposition here in this room or online from Member Green from working from draft 3?
There is none.
Okay, and Member Bogus?
The point of order is the motion's been made. We are working from draft 3.
And that is, without objection, we are. So back to you. Well, I guess it's not back to Vice Chair Carey, or to Chair Carey. It's open. So draft 3 is on the table. Are there any motions or amendments that would need to be made here? Chair Carey?
No, I understand the process you're going through, and so at this time, no. You're waiting for a motion or an amendment. Is that correct?
Yes. If there are any to draft 3, yes. Member Bogus?
Amendments to draft 3.
Yes. Member Bogus, go ahead.
I have a series of amendments and questions. First of all, it is line number... line number 68. So it says, individual with standing means for the purposes of subsection 6, that an individual is described as per 53G. Well, that's a very narrow way of describing it. So for example, it says in that code subsection 3A, that an individual with standing would then be an employee of the LEA, a student who is enrolled in the LEA, a parent of a child who is enrolled in the LEA, or a member of the LEA's governing board. So this would exclude state board members from submitting things that they know to be illegal or infractions of law to our internal audit for review. This would then prohibit a member of our staff, knowing that an LEA is non-compliant, from submitting something to the hotline. This would prohibit a member of or an employee of an organization that we interface with or that an LEA interfaces with, knowing that they are violating the law or code from reporting that. I'm just wondering, is that the intent?
Can I ask you a clarifying question to your question, Member Bogus, if that's okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is in the definition section, And so these are just defining, it wouldn't prohibit, you're saying it would prohibit, but I'm not seeing it that way. How did you?
So that would, when the word is used later on, the way it's defined here would prohibit those people from complaining and issuing a complaint.
Can we hear from Ben?
Ben Rasmussen, Director of Law and Professional Practices. I think when this was first written, that was only in the section on the sensitive materials. It's very limited in this rule. Although I just did a search, I didn't find the term other than in the definitions. So I think you could properly just strike the definition. That's,
So
we're,
then,
we're hearing that it is found in line
or maybe
348.
my search functionality must not be working right.
No, it's okay.
But it is limited
But
to
it's-
the,
but it's on
limited to
sensitive
to the issue of sensitive materials. It doesn't preclude someone that's not an individual from standing to do a hotline complaint or anything like that.
Okay, follow up, Member
So-
Bogus.
I'm gonna have to find the line numbers, but that's not how I read it. I think your search bar might have missed one other one, because it was about complaints about local LEAs, not sensitive materials. It said a hotline complaint may be made by, and then it included that language, an individual with standing. And so I would just love to, I'm just going to search my doc real fast.
While you're looking, do you want to pause or do we want to move to the next
We
comment?
can move to another one, but I would like, I have quite a few questions,
Sure.
but I would love to come back to that. Thanks.
Sure. Member Lear?
I have two amendments. And I didn't give anyone either of these amendments because they were just conceived. Pardon me?
Will you pull your
Oh, I
microphone
will,
towards you?
yes,
Thank you.
thank you. I'm sorry. I have two amendments, and should I give them to, they're two different, completely different two concepts. So the first one is on beginning on line 15. Subsection 53E3 401(8)B, which allows the board to take action for violation of, and just let's put this up at the beginning. We had asked, as a group, we had asked Ben to be consistent, whether you say statute or board rules every time, or the law or board rules every time, or the law. I don't care, but just be consistent throughout on that, okay? Is that on line 15? That's not our big issue. And the amendment I would propose is instead of the laundry list, which is exactly restating the law, we would say, for violations of statute or board rules consistent with the law.
Point of information?
Did I say that?
Or,
Did I misstate?
I would accept it as a friendly.
Okay.
Is what I was going to say.
oh,
but
to
there's-
the overall,
Correct.
okay. Well, let's, I don't know if a motion is, I know you're pointing things out, but I don't know if a motion is as even before us. Am I misunderstanding that,
No,
Carol?
that's my first motion.
Oh,
That on-
okay, we're putting it here. Yeah. Let's just make sure we get it correct so that we
Okay.
don't debate it later on of what it should have
Line
been.
50, strike statute or board rules and replace with, okay, whatever you choose. And then, that wasn't the biggie. But what we want to do is replace statute or board rules consistent with the law on line 16, as you keep following past 15.
So I've got two, it looks like I've got two, and I must have got lost somewhere, remember Lear. Will you just make sure, we've got two things with your name on it up there,
Okay.
and nothing is
And
before the
nothing
body
is,
yet.
it has a complete sentence.
So let's just keep an eye on that.
So let's start with the top one. Board Member Lear, motion to amend, that the board amend draft 3, line 15 to strike statute and replace with, let's just read it, action for violation of for violations of the law consistent with, I don't know how to do this without repeating it, so maybe you can help me. For violations of the law consistent with provisions in the law, meaning all this laundry list gives us the corrective action options. Corrective action provisions of law or something to that effect. So anybody that wants to chime in, do you understand what I'm saying, Ben? Yes. Okay. We need to find the words. Yeah, I didn't know off the top of my head. Yeah. Well, 53E3401 is the one that,
Ben, are you here to make a comment or to support Carol?
it's circular.
Okay. We all need support.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. So now, is that how you would have it read? Yes.
So it would read, which allows the board, I don't have the mic. So it would read, which allows the board to take action for violations of the law consistent with section 53E3401.
Yes, that would be my first, and then delete the rest of the lines.
Strike 18 through
18
30,
through 31,
35.
35.
With your, there's no, never mind, I won't ask yet. I'll stay in my lane here. So let's make sure, Member Lear, this is your motion.
And then I'd like to speak to it. I kind of did, but I can just,
Well, so
Yes,
the motion
it
then
is.
is that the board amend draft 3, line 15 to strike lines 18 through 35 and replace with law consistent with 53E-3-401.
it is, yes.
Is there a second to this? Second. Go ahead, Member Lear, and speak to that.
I had just pointed out to Member Carey that this is all in the law, and he actually reinforced that, yes, he took this language right out of the law, so there's no need to restate it in the rule.
Okay. The motion then is that the board amend draft 3, line 15 to strike language after violations of and lines 18 to 35 and replace with law consistent with 53E-3-401. I'm not seeing any lights. Is there any opposition to this amendment here? We have a comment, but go ahead, Vice Chair Wood.
Sorry. So the beginning part is 53E3401B, which allows us to make rules, but that's consistent with 53E3401D. Should we put a D in there? Because that's where all that description is that we would now be taking off.
I would leave that to the.
Do we need that where we've isolated B up above? Because B does not give us the laundry list. Or is it,
If you want to be more specific, that's perfectly fine.
well, I guess that would,
So yes, let's say yes in order to,
So 8D.
right.
Okay. So let's put this to a vote, just because there's some discussion, some context. Yeah,
I think it's B as in boy.
B as in boy.
Oh, there you go.
I thought you said D as well.
well, it's described in subsection.
And I made
Okay.
a misprint.
So the motion then is that the board amend draft 3, line 15 to strike language after violations of and lines 18 to 35, that's what's stricken, and replace with law consistent with subsection 53E-3-4018B. Let's vote. Member Green?
Yes.
We're not getting our,
There we go. Voting is open.
There it is.
Thank you. And we got you as a yes, Member Green. Thank you.
Okay. It doesn't like me.
That passes unanimously. You can't see Vice Chair Wood's vote. She has hit yes repeatedly. So let's keep moving. Let's keep going. Yeah, Member Lear, you had another line here. Do you want to keep going?
Yes. This would be on line 312 in draft 3. And this would be the title of it. Superintendent responsibilities. Superintendent, keeping in mind that that is defined in our definition rule as superintendent and staff. So that's meaning the extended staff. Superintendent responsibilities related to the education hotline.
Let's just make
Or
sure.
regarding the education hotline. Is that line 312 in draft 3?
Oh, okay, we got the,
Oh,
let's
yeah.
make sure you get your motion correct, Member Lear, then we'll put a second to it if desired and speak to it.
It's, if you want, you can, it's a little longer than that. I mean, you can go through the whole, you want me to go through, that's just the first part of the motion. Well, all I see is that the board amends. Okay, amend, beginning on line 312, the existing language to read, superintendent responsibilities related to or regarding the public education hotline.
We changed that because that's specifically for reports that come outside of the public education hotline.
But, let's see then.
That's what I'm trying to.
Let's hold that thought. Let's hold the thought on the title.
We'll pause on that one. Yeah, that's
Pause
okay.
on- I can give you the language that's below and then. Not reported through.
Well, do you want to take a second? We can go back to Member Bogus. I know she was in the queue as
Whichever,
well.
if she'd like to go ahead, that's
You ready,
fine.
Member Bogus, for your motion? Okay. Member Bogus, go ahead when you're ready. I'm going to give you a hot mic, Christina.
So I'd like to start with line 95. And I move that we add the words political convention after the word a and before the word or. Or actually, I think or is my word. 95.
Okay, so your motion then is that to amend line 95 to add after regular primary election.
No, it would say immediately preceding a political convention or regular primary election.
Okay, so you want to insert the language political convention or right before a regular primary election, is that correct?
Yes.
So the motion, the motion is that the board that the board amend line 95 to add after political convention, to add political convention or after immediately preceding a. So will you read that how you, in its entirety, how you would like 95 to be heard or read?
I would like 95 to read immediately preceding a political convention or regular primary election if the accused board member is a candidate in the election. Oh, strike the word primary.
And strike the word primary.
And
At
I
the
suppose I
end
should
of
say,
96.
for clarity, as I read it out loud, thank you for prompting me to do so, a political nominating convention. I think that is more clear.
Okay. So with the proposed amendment, lines 95 and 96 would read, immediately preceding a political nominating convention or regular.
Matt, I'm going to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Just because our staff, I think, misunderstood me. The primary that I would like deleted is in the second line, Elise. I'm so sorry. You're doing great work, and I know you're tracking all of us, but it's not that one. It's the other one. Yes, right there. We would need to strike that. Thank you. I appreciate you, and thank you, Chair Hymas.
Yeah, thank you. So with the amendment, the lines 95 and 96 would read, immediately preceding a political nominating convention or regular primary election if the accused board member is a candidate in the election. Or, that's correct?
Yes, because it goes on.
Yep. Do we have a second? Okay, back to you, Member Bogus, to speak to your motion.
Awesome. So most of us in this room were elected through the convention cycle. And the way this is currently written, it's written as, you can't mess with them during a primary, but during a convention cycle, you can beat on them all you want, whether it has any merit or not. And so if we're going to institute this, I think we need to be fair and sporting to all parts of the nominating and election cycle. And for those who choose not to collect signatures, the nominating convention is your primary election. And so I think it's just fair and sporting to put that language in there and make sure that we're operating and firing on all cylinders. Thank you.
Member Davis.
I don't have a problem adding this convention part in, I guess, and maybe I need to wait because this speaks to the overarching lines here. So maybe I'll just stay in queue. Once this piece gets added, then can I just be in queue to talk about that?
On this, I think we have Member Lear still in the queue, but I'm going to, Member Lear, if it's okay, I'm going to bump Member Davis ahead of you to speak to this amendment. Is that right? Once it's been either included or accepted or rejected.
I'm fine with the amendment. It's the lines.
I don't know what that means. And Emily can't hear you. Let's tackle it now. It's on the floor before the body. So yeah, Member Davis.
Okay, so I don't know, Chair, if this question would best be addressed by Member Bogus or Carey or Lear, and so many people have worked on this. I'm just wondering if somebody can help me wrap my head around this, because am I understanding this correctly, that we're saying that for political reasons, nobody can make a complaint against a board member if one of us does something that is not legal or whatever for 60 days prior to convention, 60 days prior to a primary, 60 days prior to a general. I mean, does the legislature do that? They have their ethics commission. Do they say nobody can make a complaint for 6 months out of the year? Because that's seems like half the year. If one of us does something egregious, the public is left to nothing.
So you're worried that during an election year, I can just go bonkers and nothing can be reported?
You specifically, I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
No, of course not.
Member Earl?
Yeah, the convention is the only piece that the legislators, it's not in their policy. So this new addition is not actually in theirs, but the other two are in theirs. And it doesn't prohibit someone from actually making a complaint. It's just that you can't do it during those 60 days. So prior to or following, it's not like it's, oh, well, you did something wrong during those 60 days, so therefore you can get away with it. It's just that after those election cycles, it can't be used as a political bludgeoning, in other words. So I don't know about, I mean, I don't know how does that make sense? How the convention, that's new to this, but the legislators actually do have those 60 days in their ethics policy.
And Member Davis, before I go to Member Reel, you asked you asked a question, you invited 3 board members to respond. I don't see any lights on. I don't know what the intent is either. Is there a specific direction or individual you'd like to ask? How can we best address your question here?
I'm just trying to find the line between precluding political bludgeoning, which you would hope people wouldn't do, and this protection of ourselves politically that cuts out half of a year. Maybe I'll just be a no on the whole thing, and then because it just seems like for half of a year, everybody's immune. I don't know. Seems like a long time.
I've got member Reel and then member Carey.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking in opposition of this. This feels like a very politically moved, I like convention nominating, I like signature gathering thing that I would rather stay out of. And honestly, I'd like to get to some better work than engaging in this kind of dialogue about this when it doesn't feel necessary. As Member Earl says, it's not in the legislative piece. It's a battle that it now feels so political that if you vote yes on this, then you like nominating convention. And if you vote no on it, then you don't like nominating, you like signature. This is ridiculous. We need to move on from this and not include this. So I'm expressly saying that I am in opposition to this amendment.
Member Carey.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to say that the only thing it would prescribe is Board Member Davis said that it would prohibit somebody from complaining or, right. The only thing this would do is say you couldn't formally file the complaint. That individual could still go to the press. They could still go to the courts. They could still go to the legislature. They could, all those options they still retain, which I would argue in many cases have more significance than perhaps the filing of a complaint. So I just wanted to make sure that nothing in this rule would limit or curtail an individual's to do anything other than formally file the complaint with USBE.
Follow up, Member Davis.
But this would be the lowest level. Like those things are all big time. Like you'd leave people with only those options. And I don't know. That's part of my concern. But I feel another comment coming on from Member Carey. So help me.
Please, clarity is always good. Yeah, Member Carey.
Yeah, I think that the purpose is to, you don't want to protect the people that should be held accountable. And if they're held accountable, that should be swift. It should be wrought with due process, but I wouldn't want to see a delay in that process. But at the same time, I've been on the board when I believe this process has been weaponized against a board member, and I don't want to see a repeat of that either. So to that extent, I think this tries to find the balance. I don't think that there was any nefarious intent to exclude nominating conventions. This language mirrors the language in the ethics provisions that the legislature has, and that's why it was incorporated here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I'll speak to this as well. I see where this can be, I see both sides, quite honestly. I also see where this can level the playing field. Whether we like it or not, we each have to go through this political stuff, right? And some of you are staring down the barrel of it, and some of us are on the butt end of that rifle for a minute anyway, right? And so I get that this is all part of this process. What this does, if I'm looking at this kind of levels the playing field with your competition, if you will. Like it should level it out a little bit to say you can't necessarily have bogus things coming at you. It is hectic, as we all know, to run a campaign, and with everything else on top of that, to have, if there are bogus reports coming in, to have to battle with that, it's a challenge. So I'm going to support this motion, just me personally, but I do see both sides. Let me restate the motion. It looks like we can take a vote. The motion is to or that the board amend line 95 to add political nominating convention or after immediately preceding a and strike the word primary so that the complete section would read immediately preceding a political nominating convention or regular primary election if the accused board member is a candidate in the election. Let's go ahead and vote.
Member Green is a yes.
Thank you, Member Green. Okay, that passes 13 in favor, 1 in opposition, that opposition coming from Member Reel. We have a couple of board members, I don't see any lights, but I know that there are a couple of board members who had, let me ask Member Lear, did you, are you have another motion or did you get that? Okay, let's just kind of bounce back and forth. Member Bogus just made one, we'll go back to you and then we'll.
The second motion begins on line where we were before with that tricky title. 312, yes. So the title would be amended to read, Superintendent Consultations under this rule.
So the motion before the board is that the board amend line 312 and to read superintendent consultations under this rule, striking the language for alleged violations not
Yes.
reported through the public
Yes.
education hotline. Is that correct?
Right, there's more to the amendment, but do you want me do me to
Let's
do
see.
them in pieces?
No, let's get a second, and or however you want to do it.
Okay, let me just do it all then.
Okay,
because
go ahead.
It's all related to the title. So that's the title. And then it would read, parentheses 1, the superintendent may consult with LEA leaders, comma, staff, and others regarding public education concerns, issues, and problems, period. With LEA leaders, staff, and others regarding, I'm reading rather than watching you. Huh?
It was a race to see who could write it in fast enough. I was trying to decide who the other person was. Was that you, Elise?
Others regarding public education concerns, issues, and problems.
It was like a little race.
You're supposed to use the Harvard comma.
Oxford.
I know, you do that on purpose.
We're not talking about Crawford.
I'm just kidding. All right, and it is an Oxford comma. Harvard. I'm a fan of a Harvard these days. Okay, now, so that's Pren 1. Now Pren 2 would be such consultations do not need to be reported to the public education hotline, comma, unless otherwise required by law. And then can I speak to that? And you want to capitalize superintendent?
Let's see if we have a second. Is there a second to this motion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let me read the motion in its entirety, Carol, and we'll make
Sure.
sure that it's there. The motion to amend is in 3 parts. First, that the board amend line 312 to read superintendent consultations under this rule. Second, insert paren 1, the superintendent may consult with LEA leaders, staff, and others regarding public education concerns, issues, and problems. Part 3, insert paren 2, such consultations do not need to be reported to the public education hotline unless otherwise required by law. Member Lear.
Thank you. Most of this speaks for itself. I think that the Law and Licensing Committee generally, and those of us who worked on this, wanted to allow for the superintendent and her staff to talk to people, be a resource to people, and not be anxious or nervous that something that's discussed could be a violation or an alleged violation. We wanted to allow for the office to be a resource, and also to express trust in the employees. So that was the purpose of this language, and trusting that those that are, where there are concerns, either that the law requires to be reported, would be required or would be reported to appropriate agencies or law enforcement, and then also that if what the superintendent heard or staff heard became an alleged violation, that would go to the education hotline, and that requires some subjectivity on the part of staff.
Okay. Member Bogus and then Member Carey.
I have a motion, I have no comment.
Member Carey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to echo what Board Member Lear said, we certainly don't want to create a disincentive for LEAs or leaders in the field to feel that they can't call Superintendent Dixon or soon, well, I guess you've been sworn in, Superintendent Hart, or anyone else on the staff. If they have a question or concern and they're struggling with something, we want So,
Yeah,
so I just
please.
wanted to say, we just didn't want to create a disincentive, and we want to encourage that. And we also didn't want to put staff in the position of having a consultation and thinking, does this have to be reported? Doesn't it have to be reported? And then feeling this, do I have to err on the side of this was a formal alleged violation versus a consultation? So we thought this was the best approach to build trust, foster trust, and continue to hold USBE out as a resource. Thank you.
I appreciate that. It looks like, Member Lear.
Because Ben reminded me, the language that was in draft 3 initially, starting on line 320, was sort of trying to get at the same idea, but we, as we worked on it, decided that, and tracking and reporting has some advantages that were, that we couldn't quite settle whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. So for now, the consensus was we'll delete lines 320 and 322 through 322 and just leave it as is stated in the amendment. So that was the last part, to strike the lines 320 through 322.
Is there any objection with the board to include number 4? Not hearing any, this is our new motion then, is a 4-part motion. So that motion then before the board is 1, that the board amend line 312 to read superintendent consultations under this rule. 2, insert paren 1, the superintendent may consult with LEA leaders, staff, and others regarding public education concerns, issues, and problems. 3, insert paren 2, such consultations do not need to be reported to the public education hotline unless otherwise required by law. 4, strike lines 320 to 322, or 320 through 22. Let's go ahead and vote.
Member Green is no.
Thank you, Member Green. That passes 12 in favor, 4 in opposition. Those, or I'm sorry, 2 in opposition, those 2 being Member Green and Member Bogus. Additional motions. Member Bogus, back to you.
Do I need to be on? Thank you. Okay, so if we move to line number, well, actually, I have a question first. And maybe if I could share through you to Director Rasmussen. 76 through 80. So when these words are used later on, it does not appear as if their definition is consistent with the way they are used later on. So for example, a resolved hotline complaint is when an investigation has been completed? Or is it, and genuine question, is it when it's been referred, acted upon, handed off? I'm just wondering if in your opinion, Director Rasmussen, is that definition actually complete the way it's used in this document?
I would probably punt to Director Davis on that, as she runs the hotline process.
Could we run that through her?
Yeah, Debbie, can
please?
you join us at the table?
So Chief Audit Executive Debbie Davis. So specific to the definitions, interestingly, when they were first added in this rule, they were added specific to the very last section about sensitive materials. So they didn't actually apply to the other kind of general hotline process. That said, the terms are used throughout the rule now. And so I guess there could be question like, hey, are these definitions, do they still apply in the same way to the hotline as well as sensitive materials? But I think resolved, and I think it's used in those LEA sections where we refer back to an LEA and they're the ones doing an investigation and then they provide a summary report back. And so in doing that, did the LEA resolve it? Did they complete, what they needed to do according to their policies, since there's the local control factor there? But anyway, that's a bit of context about that. Did that answer your question?
It does, but I think with that context, we've got a definition problem. So I need to think on that for a minute. And then it says, in line 78 through 80, and either one of you, CAE Davis or Director Rasmussen, it says resolve does not mean or require that the findings are satisfactory. And then it says, but that the matter has been concluded. Again, as we consider the document in its entirety, what does that mean? Does it mean we've kicked it to the LEA, it's done from us, we're finished? I guess when I see these words used, these definitions don't reconcile with the manner in which they're used.
Okay. So I was just clicking through to see, okay, how are we using them in the document? And it appears that it really, the resolution or that term resolved is used. So for example, on 302, where it says, if the hotline complaint is not resolved within the summary submittal timeline, then the LEA keeps providing an update. So then if we were to go back up to that definition and say, okay, so the LEA needs to, they're working on something in accordance with their policy. They have to send that summary back to us. But essentially the LEA is determining if it's resolved or not, and then they're going to report that to us. And so I think on 78 and 79, where it's saying resolve does not mean or require that the findings are satisfactory to an individual. The findings are what the findings are. Based on who's doing the investigation. In this case, it would be the LEA. So they should report based on the evidence what happened. And to your question, right, it's like the matter has been concluded. So they investigated and it's concluded based on the facts. That's what it is. Then they report back to us and it's done. Does that get closer to, did we use it correctly or not?
Yes, but I'm wondering, so let's say, maybe my struggle is with the word matter, because let's say they find merit. There are ongoing issues, for example, for perhaps, and as you see throughout this document, if they find merit, then the merit doesn't mean that the person accused thinks it's right, or even the LEA, but that they've resolved the investigation, and I'm trying to combine 66 or 76 through 80. So resolve says an investigation has been completed, and the other one says it means that the matter has been concluded. And so we're trying to say two things at the same time, but if you find merit, the matter's not concluded, it's referred.
Okay, sorry, I'm double checking words again.
No, I'm glad, thank you, I appreciate you.
Okay, and the one thing I wanted to check, because this definition was ultimately included in the first place because of sensitive materials, is first, is it used in that section where it could have a completely a different definition, or it would look differently than the hotline process? And it looks like it is not used for sensitive materials anymore. So from my perspective, resolved would then mean, and as we've used it throughout the rule, is, okay, internal audit does our piece, we refer, right, that's happening. Again, it's at that local level where an investigation, so maybe the couple words to think of, an investigation has been completed. That term's not defined, but we're saying, I think it's saying an LEA has taken some action, right? An investigation means the LEA looked into it, or whomever it needed to go to looked into it, and then I think you're right, matter, should that be the complaint has been concluded, the hotline complaint or the alleged violation has been concluded? Would that be a more specific term instead of the matter, which is very generic?
So may I ask one final question? So I do like that language better. I'm going to ask you and Director Rasmussen, what if we just struck the words, but that the matter has been concluded, just strike them all together, and those two, A and B together, would be what it means and what it does not mean based on what you've told me here. So just looking at this, it would then read that A, resolved means that an investigation has been completed, but it does not mean or require that the findings are satisfactory to any specific individual, LEA, or entity.
Concerns with that.
It doesn't, that doesn't
But
change, that's, I guess that's the question, that doesn't change, because this, if this was originally brought up for sensitive materials, does it change anything in regards to anything else in the rule? Understanding that this is just a definition, trying to get clarity. And you're saying, Debbie and Ben, I put you on the spot here, from your initial glance, you can't see where this would change things. Okay. So
Then I would make
is that
that
a motion
motion.
then? So
Yes.
check the screen, Member Bogus, and make sure that that motion is correct.
Yes, that is correct. Thank
So-
you.
So the motion before the board is that the board amend line 79 to strike, but that the matter has been concluded. Do we have a second to that motion? We do have a second. Would you like to speak? I know we've kind of been going back and forth.
I have no desire to speak. They've answered my questions well. Thank you, sir.
Is there, and speak up if there is, we'll take a formal vote, but if there is no opposition, we will move forward. Is there any opposition to removing this? Member Green, I'm going to call you out since you're online. Okay, not hearing
I'm
any.
so sorry. There is no opposition for me.
Thank you. So then we're going to consider that resolved. Can we say that? Pun, wordplay. Okay.
I'm going to smile really big
Let's-
for you, Matt Hymas.
Let's keep going then.
All right, I'd like to move us to line 88 through 90. And strike at least one and just put an individual, and then strike the language against an individual board member just because it's redundant. And with a second, I can speak to that motion because it does have, it's substantive.
Second.
Thank you, Member Green. Let's make sure, we'll keep an eye on the screen, make sure it's how you like it, how you want your motion, Member Bogus.
Yeah, so in line 88, replace the words "at least one" with the word "an," A-N, and then strike all of 90 against the individual board member. Yes.
The motion before the board, yeah,
Sorry, I was answering my own question. Did I say it correctly? Yeah, I did. Yes.
the motion before the board then, and it has been seconded, is that the board amend line 88 by replacing the words "at least one" with the word "an," and strike all of line 90 that says "against the individual board members." So it would read, again, Member Bogus,
It would read, "shall be filed by an individual having actual knowledge of the facts and circumstances supporting the complaint."
okay, and you want to speak to your motion, please?
Yes, so if you look up at line 87, while we're amending this line, the words "against the individual board member" are just redundant. And I think to imply that we need more than one to produce validity to a complaint is not appropriate. I just, one person can file a complaint and it can have merit. I don't think requiring more than one is appropriate.
Okay, so the motion before the board then is that the board amend line 88 by replacing the words "at least one" with the word "an," and strike all of line 90 "against the individual board member," so that the motion, or so that the line would now read, "A, shall be filed by an individual having actual knowledge of the facts and circumstances supporting the complaint." Is there any opposition to this? Member Green?
No.
Okay. Let's adopt it. Member
Sorry,
Bogus?
thank you. If I can move us to line 139. Without objection, I'd like to add the word "the" in between "from" and "complainant."
So that it would read, "request additional information from the complainant." Ben, can we just do that? Chair rules, that is unanimous. Okay.
And in line 144, there needs to be a comma after the word "if."
Okay.
And more substantively, in line 161, I move that we add the words "local" and "state" and pluralize "members."
Where's this at, Member
161.
Bogus? 161. Let's get that in the form of a motion.
It's line 161. Wait, maybe I read it incorrectly. So, let me look at this other draft here. 160. So, interesting. So it would be, apparently, it's 160 in the PDF, but it's 162 in the Word doc. So when I converted it to Word, it changed the line number. I apologize. So then it would be line 160. And I move that we add the words "local and state board members."
Member Lear, point of information.
That's an example of where the rule writing manual directs the drafter to draft in the singular.
Well, not necessarily.
Well,
Ben, you gotta,
Or, oh, I see, because they
I
want
think,
to,
as I understand it, you're saying that we're going to
Correct.
send this to all the local board members and the state board member. So that would be
Would be
a plural.
2 members, yeah.
but she wants the paren S is what she's,
That's, so it would be a paren S because you have a local and a state.
but I thought you couldn't do paren S's.
Oh, well, we wouldn't put it in parentheses. We just add the S.
Oh, okay. All right, then I apologize. Yes, I get what you're saying.
so is this,
Thank you.
Member Bogus, you can see on the screen here with the in context, appreciate staff for picking up on this so quick.
Yeah.
So is this match your intent of your motion?
It does match my motion. I don't know if it matches my intent. The local. Well, let's debate it. I may pull local, but with a second, I want to speak to it and then have that conversation about the whys and wherefores.
Well, does this read, I'm going to state the motion, I
It
just want to
does
make sure it
read on
reads.
this
Okay,
thing as I stated it, yes.
okay, so the motion then is that the board amend line 161 to add the words local and state and pluralize members so that in context it would read, see the board members of the local and state district wherein the LEA is located. Yes, Debbie, please.
I just want to clarify to make sure we'd be able to operationalize this. So essentially what this is saying is we'd need to know essentially the school and LEA for that each board member is over at the state level. We would also need to know that for each local district as well. We are working on getting that at the state level. Is that information available locally so that we could easily look that up and put it in? At this point, we don't have that information in an easily usable manner. So that would be additional work. I'm willing to do it. I'm just saying I don't have that information currently. So I want to clarify if that's what that means.
Thank you, Debbie. And I would just, seeing this on its surface, I would vote against this as the local LEA should be, and they are responsible for informing their board members, not us. We reach out to the LEA as far as I understand. To now start just including additional people, I don't think is necessary. So I'm not in favor of this motion. Member Bollinger?
Thank you, Chair. And I would agree with exactly what you just said. I mean, when we debated this and talked about this in committee, we wanted to make sure that the LEAs, it does get reported to the LEAs, and that wording in is here, and it can be to whoever they designate they want those complaints to go to. I would be concerned if we expected audit to maintain an updated list of all of the local board members in every school they're associated with, and that would include directors of charters. So I don't know, like they were saying, if they would be able to scale that, I would be concerned about that. And I do agree with Chair Hymas, where I think that's the LEA's responsibility to notify their local board.
Thank you, Member Bollinger. I never got a second. Is there a second to this motion? Member Hall? Okay. Let's continue debate. That's on me because I started debating before ever getting a second. So I've got back to Member Bogus and then Vice Chair Wood.
So I completely see your thing. I actually have those same concerns. My concern is when I'm in conversation with local board members, and I've had conversations with their board president, and I've had conversations with their superintendent or appropriate personnel, and their own board member that is over that area in which there is an issue has no clue about what I'm talking about. That is my concern, is that if we expect it to get to the end of the row, we might just have to do it ourselves. And I'm glad we're having the conversation because I agree with you. It seems big. But the reality is we've got local board members that are left in the dark and they have absolutely no clue what is going on in their own district because their own board leadership leaves them in the dark. And so I'm glad we're having the conversation, and I think we should continue to debate it. Thank you.
And I would just say that that's a problem between them and their superintendent. I don't want to make that our problem. You know what I mean? That's my thoughts on it. I don't want to make somebody else's problem my problem. Vice Chair Wood.
Just a question for audit. When it comes to certain complaints, the local board is an arbiter and then other complaints comes to us through executive session. How do we define that where we're not given certain information that could obscure how we make a decision in the end because we're only getting part of the complaint, we're not getting the full story, we haven't heard the full investigation? How does that make sure that we're being a fair judge and jury at the end?
Debbie, please.
Is that okay? Yeah, so Chief Audit Executive Debbie Davis. It's a great question, and I don't necessarily know that I have the answer because we do get information and we make a decision about, oh, we need to refer this or this needs to go to this board, and they'll get that information based on the information we have at that time. Even some of the timetables that are included in the rule, whether it's 3 days or 7 days, it's like we have timelines. We have to get the information out, and then maybe 3 months later after an investigation has occurred and it's, oh, now it's gone to UPAC and there's been an investigation and now it's coming back. And so just at different times, there's different information available. And I don't know that there's a way necessarily based on how we're currently doing it to mitigate further who knows what when. If we wanted to look at a completely different policy take on how you do hotlines, like the Office of Inspector General for Medicaid, right? That's totally independent, and that would preserve the independence of a potential appellate body if something came to them. But kind of currently, as the policy is, based on the timelines and things, we're doing the best we can to make sure the individuals based on rule are getting the information when they're supposed to get it, and it could come back and there could be more or different information that could impact decision making. Did that answer your question, Vice Chair Wood?
Thank you. Let's put the motion before us one more time and then take a vote. We don't have any other comments on that. The motion is that the board amend line 161 to add the words local and state and pluralize members. Let's go ahead and vote. Member Green?
Member Green is a yes.
That motion fails. 12 in opposition, 2 in favor. Those in favor are Member Green and Member Bogus. It sounds like we have just another handful of motions from Member Bogus, and then I think we'll be close to wrapping this rule up. So, Member Bogus.
Thank you, sir. Line 163, without objection, it needs to be for, and then you need to put the infinitive form of all those verbs there. And then I'd like to move us to line 171.
On to 171.
Yeah, in line 163, it's the organization responsible for receiving, investigating, or resolving. And then in line,
I'm sorry, Member Bogus. Is it 162? Sorry, our lines are off now. I don't know what happened, but
I'm so sorry, I don't know either. In fact, I might use the words from now on because I appear to be one line off.
yeah, if you can use section and subsection, we might be able to find it quicker.
Okay, so in line, maybe it's 170, I don't know where the subsection is at this point. It says when the IAD makes a referral to an LEA, that's 169?
Line 169 for.
Okay, I would just like to add the words without a conflict of interest to the end of that statement. So it would read, at least 2 board members of LEA leadership without a conflict of interest.
Well, let's put this before us here. So the motion then is to add at the end of line 170 without a conflict of interest. Is there a second? We've got a second by Member Hall. Back to you, Member Bogus, to speak to this before questions.
So I think it's important to ensure, like, for example, later on, it talks about if that individual is named, they can't be sent the referral. So obviously, that's taken care of. But I'm thinking about all of the other situations in which the investigation could or does affect either the family member, the niece or nephew of the whatever. And I'm not expecting our internal audit department to go through all of those things. That's not my expectation. My expectation would be if there's a known conflict of interest that we avoid it at all costs. So we're not sending something to, and I'm making this up, but there's a very common name on the Granite School Board, and Granite School District probably has 20 employees with that name. And so if that's the case, maybe we say, hey, is there any conflict of interest before we send this off?
Thank you. Member Bogus, Member Earl, can I make a comment real quick? No. Okay, over to Member Earl. I just to speak about this, to speak on this, I worry that when we put this in the rule, we, regardless of what has been shared today, our USBE staff and our board members, we try to adhere to rules and policies and bylaws as much as possible. And if this is in there, then if the IAD sends it to somebody with a conflict of interest unknowingly, then this comes back to harm us. It could potentially come back to harm us. I don't believe, and I could be wrong, Debbie, that they say that you guys knowingly send this on to somebody with a glaring conflict of interest anyway. But a conflict of interest can be dependent upon the individual who is either observing, right, in any form. And so it's hard to tie down what a conflict of interest actually is. So I've got concern with that. Those are my concerns, although I do see exactly what Member Bogus is saying. I mean, of course we don't want that, but that's my thoughts on that. I'm not a big fan of that just because I think it might get us in trouble. Member Earl.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I just don't know how we would know all those interactions locally, all the connections where it's at the state level. You would think it's going to the leadership capacity and that those individuals would have to be responsible for that versus us having some in-depth knowledge on something that I just think we can't possibly do that. And if we do, I'm sure we'll, make recommendations to the right people, but.
Member Bogus.
So if that's your concern, you could amend that to say without an overt conflict of interest.
Thank you. The motion before the board is that the board amend line 169 by adding without a conflict of interest. And so that would read in context, when the IAD makes a referral to an LEA, the referral shall be sent to at least 2 members of LEA leadership without a conflict of interest. Let's vote.
Member Green is a yes.
Thank you, Member Green. That motion fails. 12 in opposition, 2 in favor. Those in favor being Member Green and Member Bogus. Member Bogus.
Well, they disappeared. Well, I guess that's all I have because they've disappeared from my document.
Your computer is telling you you're done. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, apparently
They're just,
so.
they vanished. Okay. Thank you, board members. Let's get back to the motion at hand here. And see if I can find it on my sheet here. You found it. Okay. Go ahead, Member Bogus.
Outlines, in this document, it's 188 and 189. It reads track and review summaries.
Mm-hmm. Starts on 187 in the PDF.
Okay, so there's an and there, and then 2 lines later, you strike the and then in 2 lines later, there's another and. And my question is, is there a reason for that? Is it like this and this, or this and this?
There's just been multiple revisions. I'll fix that. We don't need to have a vote on that. I'll take a look at it afterwards.
But you understand my question?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I think that's it. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, thank you. The motion before the board then is that the board approve R277. Oh, Member Davis, that's my apologies. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I know, seriously, don't throw tomatoes. I have an amendment, but I just can't find the right place in this document. And just hear me out. I think that we need to require that LEAs post on their website a chain of command for complainants to help resolve their complaints. And without them having a list of a chain of commands, it goes, my teacher made me mad, or my principal, and then to us. And I think we're missing some key pieces at the local level. I think additionally, just like we have an appeal process for any of our board rules, the public, 10 people in the public can get together and make an appeal against our rule. We should require LEAs to have an appeal process against a policy. However, for today, I'm asking you, Chair, and maybe this is a question for our staff. Can we require that LEAs list a chain of command to resolve complaints in this rule, or do we have another rule that it would be more appropriately placed?
Yeah, thank you. It's a good question. I'm gonna, Vice Chair Wood has some thoughts, but I don't know if most LEAs, I'm gonna refer to those who work in schools. I know my LEA, we have a communication policy which very clearly lays that out. And so I don't know if that's common among schools. I don't know if it needs to be required or if it already is required
And
somewhere.
how do parents find it? Do they have to read all your policies to read it, or is it a very clear, if you have a concern, here's
Again,
teacher, principal,
depending on the LEA. So I guess
principal supervisor,
it depends on
superintendent?
how much we want to say, this is how you're going to do your job, right?
Well, it's how
As-
much we want to do their job, because people don't know how to find the right people to do their job. That's the question.
If that's a concern, but you're saying you want to just require
A list of a chain of command
from
for
each,
complainants to help resolve their concerns. Every parent that comes to me, I go through the chain of command and we work it through and we resolve their concern. But why do they have to call me? Why can't they just look on the website and say, look, if you have a concern, here's a chain of command. Teacher, principal supervisor, assistant superintendent, superintendent.
they might, in trying to look at
With
this
contact
broad
info.
spectrum, is maybe they have, and that's why you're not hearing from them, right? You're only hearing from the ones who are not either researching that or not finding it. That's what I'm saying. There's two sides to this.
Sure, to everything. But most of the time, people that I talk to have no clue who to talk to past, the kid's teacher or principal.
So I guess now that I have wasted your time with that back and forth, is there a motion that you would like to put forth? I see we have lights on, first from Ben,
question.
and then we have Member Lear, Member Carey, and Member Earl. But,
Line 246?
and Vice Chair Wood saw something in here.
So
Okay.
I was just going to point to line 238 is where it says that the LEA shall have a policy outlining how the LEA will respond to and resolve hotline complaints. And I mean, I think that's where you would start. If you need to expand and provide more detail, that's where it could go. We do have provisions on there that state that there has to be a link specifically on the homepage of the LEA website with these amendments, and a lot of detail about the contact there, but that's where an amendment would go if there needed to be one.
Then I'd like to make an amendment that adds a list of chain of commands. I mean, chain of commands, is that the right word? Chain of.
That requires a posting of the chain of
chain of authority, maybe, a chain of authority in that section. Thank you, Member
You
Hall,
might even
for your
call it
help.
like a chain of communication. I don't know if it's.
To
in a-
resolve concerns.
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily a chain of authority, or, you know what I mean? Because you might start at the teacher, and they're, I mean, they have authority in some areas, but they are not the authority. But either way, Member Davis, I'm happy to support you in putting your motion forward.
I think on line 249, just a readily accessible local education hotline and chain of command.
So, and I know, Member Leary, you said, I know you want to have conversation. I just want to put something on the floor that we can converse about. I messed up. That's on me because I started the conversation early. I apologize. Yeah. While we're getting that motion ready, I can't see it on my screen, but while we're getting that ready, Superintendent Dixon has some thoughts. And if you'll, Member Davis, keep your eye on the screen to make sure your motion reads as you'd like it to.
Thank you, Chair Hymas. Member Davis, I really appreciate this conversation. I'm often the interface when somebody contacts us trying to solve a problem and they bounced around and they're just like, we don't know where to go. And you all have received those same queries and emails. I remember working with a parent group who we were having this discussion about that chain of authority, and they did a nice job of saying, here's how to solve problems. Here's, if it's with the classroom, here's who you contact. If it's with the district, here's how you go through it. But then I started trying to think about and categorize the various calls that I was receiving or emails. There's no clear-cut pathway. Sometimes it's, oh, this is something for the principal. Oh, this is something for special education at the district. I'm trying to help you solve the problem because having been through that as the mediator or the mitigator
I've done
is
the same.
challenging, and you've done the
That's what I
same.
did.
So I'm thinking aloud here, Member Davis, but I just think it's a little challenging unless you're trying to do, here's a general how-to like this parent group did, because every problem is so unique. So that's what's rattling around in my mind of if you try to create this requirement and the answer is often, it depends. Just trying to work through that. So I don't know if anybody on the board has answers to that, but that's been my experience. There's just no clear-cut pathway.
May I
based
follow
on
up,
the
Chair? I had the same thought, and really what I wanted was an appeal process, but talking to Member Lear, talked me out of it actually, and said it would be more appropriate to post a list of contact information rather than a specific local appeal. And my feeling is, we don't need to be prescriptive. It has to be teacher, principal supervisor, assistant director, superintendent. But the LEA can determine how they want their chain of command to look, and then which person is going to help that parent get to the right department and be kind of liaison with that person to help resolve the concern. Because that is missing currently.
Okay.
And I'd rather have them choose a liaison to get to the right person than have to call our state superintendent. Or I'm happy if they call me, I'm fine, but it'd be nice if they could do it on their own.
So, Member Davis, is this motion, are we attending to this motion here?
Yes, sir.
So the motion before the board, potentially with.
And it really is a chain of command. I would say a chain of command and
Okay.
communication to resolve concerns. Because communication's a little bit more nebulous than command.
So who's driving this? Let's get her motion.
Or just a chain of command to resolve concerns. And that would be in or after line 249.
So the motion is that the board add after line 249, triple I, a chain of command to resolve concerns. Do we have a second? Second. We've got a second by Member Booth. Member Davis, speak to your motion.
Some people may want to do a formal kind of hotline complaint at a local level, but some people might just want to talk to the next person to try to get some support. Most often that's the case. So I think they should have that resource.
Thank you. I've got member Lear, Carey, Earl, then Bogus. Member Lear.
I can't possibly begin to say this as tactfully as Superintendent Dixon did, so I won't. I won't even try. I feel like we have to, I think that we have too many variables in whatever the concern is to give somebody a succinct chain of command or chain of communication. And I did work with a lot of LEAs on this who had similar problems. If it's a special ed complaint, and you could certainly develop one, but it wouldn't look like a chain, it would look like a tree. And I think that might be more complicated than what we want LEAs to be required to do. For instance, you have you hear about a concern initially, reaches the superintendent, and you're referred to the special ed director, if it's a special ed complaint. If it's about an elementary teacher, you might, and it's a big elementary, and you might have a vice principal who's in charge. And I realize they could tailor this, but what if they can't reach the vice principal? Do we want them to immediately go to the principal? I feel like this is something that an LEA can do, may do, if the LEA feels like it wants to, but I don't feel like this is something we should prescribe, because taken to its worst extreme, it could be completely complicated. And what I hear more often is, and what I tell people, if that person doesn't answer you, then call this person. If that person doesn't answer you, then call this person. So it's sort of a chain of command, but it's more like be responsive at the lowest level, would be my substitute language. So I don't think right now, I don't think it's ready to be put into this rule. I don't want to add that complication to what LEAs have to do.
Thank you. Member Carey.
Yeah, I'd speak in opposition to the motion for a different reason. And I don't think Board Member Davis is suggesting that this chain of communication is mandatory, but I certainly wouldn't want anyone to see it and think that they have to talk to these 5 people before they can talk to me as a state board member, or I didn't talk to the assistant principal, so I can't talk to the principal. And I'm not saying that's being suggested, but I could see that as possibly happening. And one of the drivers behind this rule was there were 2 individuals who reached out. They wanted to file a complaint, and I said, oh, just go to your website. You'll see the language. Our rule requires that it be prominently displayed, that process be prominently displayed on your website. Neither district had the language. One district had it on their finance page, and another district said you can file complaints for harassment and hazing. I didn't know hazing was such a big problem that it gets its own pathway to filing. But so again, just confusion, and we have to do a better job communicating. So my concern would be I wouldn't want anyone ever to think that if we don't follow this process, I can't escalate without checking all these boxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Earl.
I'll try to be quick. Because I've recently had something in my own community come up at one of my districts, and the problem was if you don't do this, you can't go to the next step. It wasn't you can go to the next step, right? Which was they were legally able to go to, right? Someone else, but they said no, you have to go through these processes before you can. And so I don't want it to be a hindrance too. Although I do, whenever anybody calls me, I always, figure out who does this need to go to and send them to that person. And then if they still have a question, to come back to me, right? So I really do worry if we're trying to, I don't know that we can nail this down the way, the intent, I get it, because I think that's probably the best way to do it, right? But sometimes I think it's a little more nuanced than that. And I don't want to use it as a leveraging not to allow someone to get some additional help.
Thank you. Member Bogus.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to ask a question of either CAE Davis or Director Rasmussen through you. Considering the purpose of everything that comes before it, starting clear back at the beginning of subsection 7, what probably 308 in your document? It starts with an LEA may respond. So considering everything that comes before it in that section, this appears to be just a nullification clause of the entire section. Because it reads that they can tell us to basically bug off. And so my question is, what is the purpose of this language, considering everything that comes above it?
Sorry, Christina, is this in, I may have missed something. Is this in relation to Member Davis's motion? Am I missing a piece here?
Oh, it has nothing to do with your motion. You just called on me to talk, and
Well,
I
yeah.
was ready to talk.
Let's wrap up Member Davis's motion, then keep that
I should have
question in
told you,
your.
Matt Hymas. I
know.
apologize.
That's, I'm like, I must have missed something, but it sounds like I didn't. Let's go to Member Davis, and then we'll put you in the queue. Is that okay? No, it's all good. Member Davis.
Yes. I think, short of having a parent liaison, this is the least restrictive way to have an LEA. Let parents know information. And this is only the large LEAs. A lot of the small LEAs, it's teacher, director, small charter, teacher, director. Sensing the will of the group without objective. I disagree with all of you, but I am going to, without objection, I don't want to waste the board's time, withdraw the motion.
We're gonna vote on that right now, unless Member Lear, do you have a? Okay, we're gonna throw Member Davis's motion because it is before the body. We're gonna throw it up in the queue and take a vote on it. It's withdrawn. The motion is gone. Okay, so we are then, Member Bogus had a question that it sounds like our staff has been able to discuss and hopefully have an answer. And then we've got a motion from Member Lear.
If I may, that was originally in I think in section 4, which talks about audit responsibilities. When we had a meeting with a few of the board members where they wanted to add that language, and then the discussion was that it would go better in section 7, which talks about LEA responsibilities. So it was just kind of moved from another section. I know that it may potentially, as you point out, conflict with some of the things that the audit committee or the IAD asked for under the rule. So it may be worth considering whether that's appropriate language.
So considering that response, I would move to strike lines 309 through 311, or whatever Ben tells us they are. 308 through 310.
So there's a motion to strike lines 308 to 310. Do we have a second? Not hearing one. Let's go to,
I'll second that.
okay.
Sorry, excuse.
Again, so the motion's been stated. Go ahead, Member Bogus.
So I would just lean on staff's response that these lines are in conflict with what comes above it. And that if we're going to come into a place where we're writing rules that have nullification conflicts or words or conflicting lines, we need to make certain that doesn't happen. And to me, this entire sentence conflicts with the previous 11 things. And so I think we need to get rid of it so that we can make certain that our processes flow and are in place in a clear and thoughtful manner.
Thank you. Member Lear, are you in the queue or are you for this? Okay. Okay. Yeah.
An LEA may respond to the IED that the allegation is issued the sole responsibility of the LEA, or, we were missing an or, that the LEA is reviewing or addressing the concern. It's kind of a messy sentence, consistent with local policy and the law. And then I'd like to speak to that, to my substitute motion.
So your substitute motion, let me make sure I have that understood correctly. It's still coming up on the screen.
309, line 309.
Beginning on line 309, it says, Member Lear motion, and LEA may respond to the IAD, ... or that the LEA is reviewing or addressing.
Is that the allegation is an issue that is the sole responsibility of the LEA, or following LEA.
Or the LEA, so remove that. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, you can, yes, you can remove the that.
And replace it with
Or.
Point of order.
You can't substitute an amendment, you can only substitute a main motion.
I don't even know if that's true, I'm
What
sure.
are you saying? What do you,
I know we do substitute motions all the time,
why
so I
can't we
don't
do
know.
a substitute? This is a substitute.
Substitute amendment,
Well, it's a substitute motion to delete. My substitute motion is to amend.
yeah, we have a motion to amend, and then now we have a substitute motion, which I think is in order, but
Oh, yeah, or I'll make an amendment to the amendment. Or call.
she's
You
making a
give me
substitute
the
motion to
exact
Member
language,
Bogus's
Christina, and I'll use
amendment.
it.
Then yes, it's in order. Okay.
Okay. Or the LEA is reviewing. Well. Huh? Yeah, then I'll amend the amendment.
Sure.
I'm flexible.
You can be flexible, I just want to keep the process.
Okay, then I'll amend the amendment. Is that I think would be in order, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, Sybil.
Or the LEA is reviewing, I think we can delete or addressing, is reviewing consistent with local policy and the law. I think we can read reviewing to include addressing. Is that, and.
So the
decent
amendment to
assumption?
amend is to keep the language and remove or strike that and/or addressing, and then add or in the place of that. So it would
Yes.
read, well, we need to strike or, so it would read, an LEA may respond to the IAD that the allegation is an issue that is the sole responsibility of the LEA, or the LEA is reviewing consistent with local policy and the law. Reviewing what? The
Reviewing
allegation?
the complaint,
Okay,
or the allegation.
the allegation. Okay, do we have a second to that motion? Not hearing a second. Wait, we got a second. Okay, speak to that, Member Lear.
Oh, the point of this was, and I personally trust LEAs that they're not going to be defiant and that they are going to be cooperative with hearing from IAD. But however, there are some things that the LEA may say in response to a concern. If it's, for instance, an employment one is easy. I want you to, we've heard that you should fire your principal. And the LEA could respectfully say, that's, employment is our business, is the business of the LEA. And if you have something more specific to allege about the principal, bring it on. But if you're just alleging we should fire for incompetence, then that's not, that's the province of the LEA. Another example would be the competency of teachers. Right now, the competency of teachers is the responsibility of LEAs. And individuals can complain that the child's first grade teacher is incompetent or even lazy, but that again is the responsibility of the LEA. And I think that should be satisfactory for a response to a IAD concern. And secondly, sometimes and maybe this has happened, LEA says, yes, we've heard that the principal was inappropriately discussing things with, and we're with a student, and we are right now reviewing that with the principal. And then that resolves your, I would think, that resolves your report to the LEA.
You have a response?
Provide just context.
Sure.
So Chief Audit Executive, Okay, Debbie Davis. So just for context, as far as receiving these responses, when internal audit receives a response and what we do with the response is really what does the board want? Because this rule has essentially internal audit, we're sending things out, we get things back, and then we're supposed to report information. So I guess my question for you is, what information would you like reported to you? And if it's sufficient to just say, yes, we send it out and it came back and the LEA is handling it, if that's sufficient for you, fine. If it's not sufficient, then that's where on like line 284, it says respond as requested by internal audit department by IAD. And I think the thought with that is we'll just have a form that has some required fields, whatever they are. You can see the lines 285 through 291 or 280, 290 were stricken, so maybe we don't need to be that specific. But ultimately, my question is just, what information would you like as a board? And that's what needs to come back to internal audit. It's not what I need, it's what you would like reported to you.
Can I speak to that, Matt? And I would respectfully say that you kind of mischaracterized, not intentionally necessarily, what I was saying. I don't think that it is acceptable for an LEA to blow you off to say, we're handling that or reviewing it. But I think your response to these board members who maybe want the more information is the LEA responded that the LEA is currently in the process of investigating the employment complaint. So you then have provided them context of what the LEA said. Or the LEA is currently in the process of, and employment comes to mind really easily, as in process of investigating a complaint against, a financial complaint about a coach that's an employee. So I think you should provide more information, not make it sound like the LEA is blowing you off, but rather, or disregarding your concern, but rather responding to the board member who wants to know. The LEA knows what the concern is and is in the process of reviewing it as an employment matter. That's my opinion of what the board members might want. I don't know if I'm completely off base, because I don't particularly want any of that information, but.
Member Carey.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to make clear that the rule that we're dealing with is just for those complaints that come through the hotline, right? That's the rule that we're looking at. So when we discussed this in committee and the numerous conversations that have taken place since then, 308, lines 308 through 310 weren't addressing any type of nullification, but rather the realization that not all complaints that come to the hotline fall within the purview of this board. That's why the heading of this rule says this is a process for reporting violations of statute and board rule. So you could have an employment issue that doesn't violate statute or board rule. That is something that they could respond to the board with this language, that this is an issue that falls within the purview of the LEA. And then, if the board, for whatever reason, desires more information, audit can certainly reach out. I don't know if that would be Debbie Davis or the audit committee, but certainly it doesn't abrogate or limit any power that the board has, but rather focuses on the fact that our rule by title and definition is these are allegations that violate board rule or state statute. And if it doesn't do either of those two things, they can certainly write back and say, this is an employment issue, we're handling it. If we're unsatisfied with that answer, there are many tools that the board has to pursue additional information. That's how I understand that language. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We're close to a vote. Member, looks like Member Bogus.
So I move to amend.
Amend an amendment.
Yep.
Is this our third one?
Oh, that's right, you can't have three
Okay.
amendments.
Member Lear then.
Sorry, man.
This is one that I think we can do by acclamation, but I'll put it out there first. Line 198, I think it was overlooked in the rewrite.
Yeah, remember, Larry,
Oh.
we're still on this,
Oh,
unless you're
sorry.
withdrawing it.
Nope, not.
Okay. So the motion is that that we keep lines 308 to 310 and amend to add or and strike that and or addressing so that it reads in context 12 and LEA may respond to the IAD that the allegation is an issue that is the sole responsibility of the LEA or the LEA is reviewing consistent with local policy and the law.
It would probably be clear if we had reviewing the allegation. Consistent with the local policy.
Just put the allegation after reviewing,
Yes,
or the LEA is reviewing the allegation.
Yes.
Whoever's driving that. Okay, let's vote.
Member Green is a yes.
Thank you, Member Green. Okay, that passes. 12 in favor, 2 in opposition. Those opposed being Member Hymas and Member Bogus. Okay. Member Lear.
when I was referring to, line 198, draft 3. Pren A reads, notify the LEA governing board of the noncompliance. I would put the period after noncompliance because to hold relevant LEA personnel accountable sounds, I think, unnecessarily heavy-handed maybe, or sort of punitive.
Is this speaking to a potential motion? Do we have a second
Yes.
to this motion?
Second.
Not here, okay.
Yeah, sure. I was just, I would accept that as a friendly. This was actually stricken in the draft, but there were a lot of late night email exchange with Director Rasmussen, and I think that was missed. But yes, that was struck, and I would accept it as a friendly if there's no opposition to it.
Member Bogus, to this motion? Is there any opposition to striking to hold relevant LEA personnel accountable? I'm not hearing any. Member Green, any opposition?
No opposition.
Okay, let's adopt that then. And Member Leary, you're finished with motions. Member Bogus?
Member Lear's motion? Just
This
previous to this.
one on the screen?
Just previous to this.
Okay. The one that just passed
Yeah.
regarding lines 308 to 310?
Greg, could you please scroll up, please?
I would move that we put an introductory statement there that says, in issues that do not include allegations of rule or law.
And when you say introduction, you want it to begin with this, so 12 and would be at the end of 11?
So I didn't say and, I said in.
Oh, in. So it would read in issues, issues, plural,
Yes.
that do not include allegations of rule or law, and LEA may respond, ...
Yes.
The motion is before us. Do we have a second? Speak to your motion.
I just think it addresses everything we previously were discussing and adds greater clarity.
Okay, so the motion before the board then is to amend line 308 to add to the beginning, in issues that do not include allegations of rule or law, comma. Let's vote.
Member Green is a yes.
Thank you, Member Green. Okay, that motion fails. 11 in opposition, 3 in favor, those 3 being Member Carey, Member Green, Member Bogus. Okay, this takes us to our underlying motion here, and that is that the board approve R277-123 process for members of the public to report violations of statute and board rule, draft 3 as amended on second and final reading. Let's vote. Member Green?
Member Green's a no.
Thank you. That passes 11 in favor, 3 in opposition. Those opposed being Member Davis, Member Green, and Member Bogus. Chair Carey, back to you.
Chair, I believe that concludes the law and licensing business before the board.
Thank you. Board members, let's take a look at where we are. We are on agenda item number 8 that starts at 1:45 p.m. We have with us, if we look at our agenda, this is going to be the Standards and Assessment Committee report is agenda item 8. Agenda item 9 is Audit Committee report at 3. And then 10 is Utah School for the Deaf and the Blind at 3:15. It is currently 3:35. I'm going to suggest something, and feel free to say, Matt, that's stupid, except for you, Christina, because I know you'll actually say it. I'm going to propose that we take 7 minutes, stretch our backs, and then invite the USDB to come forward so we can take care of the business and get them out of here. Is that appropriate? Let's do that then. Thank you.